What is going on out there, everybody? And thanks again for joining me here on Expanded Perspectives. It's me. It's Cam. And as always, sitting beside me, we call him the Big Fizzy. We call him Thick Neck, the king of corn on the cob. I don't even know what else I could call him, but the man does have sleep apnea. Kyle Filson.
How's it going, folks? I'm doing well. Well, I'll take that back. I'm doing kind of well. It's always nice, to get diagnosed with a sickness that you can never get away from, incurable disease. Yeah, I did a sleep study a couple weeks ago, and my doctor got back with me. And
First test you've passed in years.
Yeah, I was told, in fact, that I do have sleep apnea and that it's incurable.
And you said no joke.
Yeah, so we're still going to I have another meeting with him. We're going to be talking about possible surgery, things like that, what my options are. And I just got diagnosed with an incurable disease. So other than that.
It's not a disease.
Yeah, I don't know what. Other than that, it's been a pretty good week.
But
what about you?
You know how much better you're going to feel?
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Oh, no, I've been doing great, just getting older because I was doing some work around the house over the weekend. Cutting some limbs, and I went out to my deer lease and cut some limbs and did some moving and some stuff around and ended up tweaking my back.
Oh no,
I've never had a back injury in my entire life, ever. And it hurt from my left hip joint up to about the center of my back, all on my left side. Dude, I could barely get up. For any of you out there listening that's had a back injury, I feel so terrible for y'all, or those that are even suffering. I've got a good friend of mine that's suffering from he's completely medically unable to do anything pretty much.
Yeah.
Because of a back injury that he received at work. Something fell on him. And you hear that and you're like, God, that sounds awful. You don't really realize until it's you. You know what I mean? You're like, Holy moly.
I knew a guy one time where he had a back injury, a pretty severe one that actually helped him. He was, I don't remember what he did for a job. I think he just worked at a warehouse or whatever, and he didn't really like his job. But, he got injured, something similar like that. Something fell on him or something. And so he had to have surgery, and he was laid up for about 6 or 7 months. Well, after watching Netflix and DVDs for weeks and weeks, he said he got bored, so he started looking into photography on YouTube. And, fast forward, it's 7 years later now, and he's like a professional photographer. So because of his injury, it actually led him to become something new. So he was able to quit that terrible job he had, and now he works for himself, and he goes all over the world taking landscape photos and stuff, and he's very happy. So it could be a positive out of something bad.
Well, it kind of worked almost that way for me. I got to sit around the house and be a pain in the ass to my family. So, we're pretty close to the same thing, I guess you could say.
Well, and
they yelled at me and give me a hard time and made fun of me. So, yeah, I'm pretty much living my best life.
Yeah. And, podcasting, all jokes aside, when we started this thing a long time ago, almost 6 years, the kids were little. I didn't have a whole lot of money, so basically I just worked and came home and got into podcasting.
And now you still just work and come home.
Now I still,
but the kids are older.
The kids are older, yes.
And they play baseball.
And fishing. We're going camping this weekend, just me and the boys.
We
got a buddy of mine has a stock tank that's stocked with fish, and it's private, so you can't get access to it without permission. Well, he got permission, so we're going out there, and it's between Comanche and Gorman. And so it's out in the sticks, but it's supposed to be really good. So it's just going to be us and 7 other boys.
Mrs. Filson is going to be very, very excited about this weekend.
She doesn't know what to do. She said she hasn't had the house to herself in so long. She's got so many things. She doesn't know if she just wants to lay around or if she wants to go do some back-to-school clothes shopping. She wants to hang out in the pool. She doesn't know what she's going to do.
She could get a lot of school supplies knocked out without any hassle this whole weekend.
Well, Luke and Jacob, they're pretty easy to buy for. They don't care. Caleb is the pickiest person on the planet. So,
ever. Yeah.
He doesn't like anything. But nobody cares about that. You were actually telling me a pretty interesting story that actually took place in our hometown here in Weatherford, Texas.
Yes.
Lay it on us.
Okay. Working for the municipality, for the city here, and my wife works for the county here, and knowing all the people that we've had for all the years, I know almost all of the law officers, be it sheriff's deputies or police or, state troopers. So anytime something goes down, you find out about this. So my wife is at work the other day, and she said she's reading through the paper, and she sees in the obituaries that there's an elderly couple have passed away. And this elderly couple was in their 90s. And so while she's reading it, one of the officers comes in that she's dealing with, and this officer knows some information, Nothing like, oh, shouldn't be sharing this information. It's all, out there. This is the whole thing. But he said there was some very strange things happened at this. I don't even know. I guess you could call it just a scene. You can't really call it a crime scene because they were like, it doesn't look like there's any crime here, but it was just old people, right, that had passed away.
Right.
The guy said it was very, very odd. The officer said, what I mean by this is that they were dressed and there was no sign of like foul play or anything. I don't believe there was. Of course, I don't think he shared that. He just said that there was nothing out of the ordinary to make you think anything like there was an attack or
forced entry or
exactly.
something. Yeah.
Or like we also hear about like at that age, lots of times there's a murder and a suicide. They want to go together and, and all this stuff. And I believe that maybe the wife was suffering from dementia. Or something. I'm not really sure on the whole thing, but I just remember that we found this out that he said it looked like if you had unplugged them, and it's kind of like imagine cutting the strings on a puppet.
Wow, yeah.
They had just dropped beside the bed on their
not in the bed.
No, on their respective sides. So like you were getting in on your side of the bed, your wife's on they're standing beside the bed, both just dropped on either side of the bed. And that's where they laid on the floors. Yeah. So he was like, yeah, that was just weird the way it was. And, and given their age, of course, you're extremely happy for these people because they got to pass together, right? They've been together their entire lives.
That's
pretty
true.
much. So you're like, awesome. Well, so they go and they start doing their investigation, checking on everything and all this. And apparently the guy had like a side room that was like a little man cave there. So they go in there and they're looking around and one of the other investigators is looking in there and he leaves and closes it all up. He's like, no, there's nothing in there but like some recliners and an old TV and all this stuff. Like that's where they would go hang out, and maybe play poker or whatever it was back, whenever they used it. Said some more investigators show up and a female investigator goes in and looks around, comes out and goes, who's been over here in the man cave? They were like, oh, so-and-so was. And she was like, is he not going to turn off the TV? And they were like, what? He's like, the TV's going. And he steps out and the investigator goes, dude, listen, there was no TV on when I was in there. I mean, it's not like it's a huge room. It's like a 10 by 12.
Ooh, the hair on my arm just stood up.
Right? And he's like, the TV is on. And they were like, well, it wasn't on when I was in there. Nobody bumped the control or nothing. Like this thing is just an old television. So they went in there and it said, well, here's another part of it. It's all staticky. It's just hissing static, like you would think a poltergeist.
Yeah,
scream,
yeah, right. That's exactly what I thought of, yeah.
So they turn that off and go to milling around and all that. Well, they start getting a call from dispatch. So dispatch is like, are you on scene? To the head investigator. And they're like, yeah, we've been here for 30 minutes. She's like, that's impossible is what dispatch tells them. It's like, what do you mean? And said, for the last 5 to 10 minutes, we've gotten 911 hang-up calls from that residence. And he's like, well, we've been here for 30 minutes. He's like, well, it's been going on. Is there anybody else in the house? And they're like, no. The entire scene is cleared and locked down. There's nobody. Said all the phones are, nobody's missing a cell phone, nothing. But yet dispatch received multiple 911 hangups from that location while the officers were there. So they do the rest of their stuff. And they said and now these aren't just like officers that have only been around, 5, 6 years. All of these officers have been here that are there that I know of that were there are double digit, like 10-year, 15, 20, 25-year investigators. Okay.
Right. Yep.
All of them agreed. They're like, something feels off here real bad. So
man, that's creepy.
They put the whole thing in lock. It went outside and waited for the coroner and the medical exam, everybody to get there. And I guess they were going to restart their investigation. And last I've heard, of course, you haven't heard, I've got to chase it down. I'm going to have to ask some more questions. And I would like to get the officer, I know him, I would like to get the officer to discuss it with me. And if he would be willing to tell more stuff, I might record him, go and do an interview of him, of the whole deal when they close the case and do all that. But they were like, the thing that they kept going back to is like, there was no sign of any sort of foul play. Now that doesn't mean that they didn't take some medicine and stand there. But the idea that they both, like usually if you take medicine and you, as you're trying to kill yourself, there's going to be, what is there? Like, maybe there's some vomit, maybe, there's something.
Right. Yeah.
What do they call it? Petechial hemorrhaging. Isn't that what happens when you get choked? I'm not sure if it does it, but there's a ways that they can tell, of these things. So apparently none of that was there. And I'm sure they're going to have to go do toxicology and go through all their system, and find all this stuff out to make sure.
Right. Yeah.
But for the most part, what it was just like they got, I don't really know how to put
unplugged. That's crazy.
I always think back, they just got their soul sucked right out of them. And that was it. The whole house was locked. Everything was put, nothing was disturbed. There's fuzz on the TV that came on by itself and multiple 911 hang-up calls while the officers were there. Nobody's using a phone. And that's it.
And it happened in our hometown.
Not only did it happen in our hometown, it happened about 2 miles from where we're sitting right now.
Oh, no. Don't tell me that.
Yeah.
Wow. 2 miles from the new studio.
Yeah.
I'd have to check in to make sure they aren't finding more people that have just been unplugged. Would that be creepy if they found another couple the same thing?
I'd be moving.
Man.
I'd be like, I'm outie.
Right. Well, speaking of moving and stuff that's creepy, check this out. This is a pretty interesting story that was forwarded to our buddy Lon Strickler. It's about someone who was being followed by something. Check this out. This says, I am a photographer for a pretty well-known magazine. My job consists of mostly traveling to beautiful destinations, seeking out all there is to see, and snapping photos. Now, of course, there's more to it than that, and I take great pride in my work. But that's the gist of it. It truly is my dream job. Well, was my dream job. After all of this, I don't know if I can continue. The subject of my latest adventure takes place in the U.S. Pacific Northwest, specifically the wild and beautiful wilderness it contains. My first stop, the Northern Cascades. Here I would be backpacking 20 miles into the National Forest Park and stops along the way. Loaded up with enough gear and food for 4 days, I set out into the wilderness and began my trek. Now I should say that my employer, well, they're not the most lucrative company in terms of how they treat their photographers. They pay well, but not that well. And hiring me, an assistant or anything, was totally out of the question. But the job does have its perks, including access to many places off limits to the general public, including some of the areas I would be visiting along my journey. Luckily, I've been doing this for a few years now, and hiking 20 miles in 60-degree weather is paradise compared to some of the things I've had to withstand in my career. Well, around 10 p.m. on the first day, I pitched my tent and hunkered down and went over some photos of marmots, deer, and fox that I had captured earlier in the day. Then I put the lantern out to get some rest, which was fine until I awoke around 2 a.m. to a loud banging noise off in the distance. Not unusual, but still unsettling. The thing about camping alone so far from anything else is there's no one to talk to, no one to bounce ideas off of, and no one to rationalize with, and no one to calm you down when you can't seem to keep it together. The noise subsided, and so I did my lucidity, and my eyes fell heavy, and I collapsed back into sleep. The next day went just as well, and I reached my destination, catching some beautiful vistas along the way. After capturing everything I had set out to do, I made camp and relaxed for the night. Again, I awoke this time again to some loud banging, and then even louder banging. This was definitely closer and also accompanied by something new and incredibly unnerving. A noise that is so hard to describe. I've tried thinking of ways to describe it, but the closest I can come to would be to liken it to something like an owl's hoot, but not much longer, and with the pitch lowered way down. Something like maybe a bullfrog's croak, but even lower than that, and also much, much louder, and with that weird little coo that owls have. I've talked to several park rangers since then, and even played a recording that I caught of one on my phone, but no one's been able to identify it. It echoes in my mind even as I write you this. It's hard to describe how bone-chilling it truly is, and I have no idea why. And to hear it when you're so far out, alone, with no cell service or any way of signaling for help, I can't even describe the feeling. Despite the enormous dread, the sound again went away just after a few moments. This time, though, getting back to sleep wasn't as easy. After an hour of laying in total silence, clenching my bear spray, I finally fell back asleep. But you want to know what the worst part was? Knowing the next morning that I still had 2 days left out here. Except that wasn't going to work for me. I packed up as fast as I could, and I began hiking back at a very brisk pace. I worked out that if I walked faster and with fewer breaks, I could make it back in a little over a day, meaning I would only need to stay one more day in this place, and that by then I would be much closer to the brushier and busier trails, and therefore, I thought, safer. I walked 12 hours straight, with only 2 slight breaks, and managed to make it even further than I originally expected. At this pace, I could reach the truck by 1 a.m. if I walked straight through. And though I was exhausted as hell, that's exactly what I did. Everything went pretty well until about 10:45 p.m., only a few minutes after total darkness had fallen over the forest, when again, I began to hear the noise. The sound had an otherworldly quality to it, like a cat's purr, only if you reversed it. It lowered the pitch, and it sounded like something was booming through a megaphone. I'm telling you, it was loud. My legs were burning, but it didn't matter. I walked even faster. No matter how fast or slow I walked, the noises always sounded the same distance away. It never got any closer to me, but it was always close, seemingly just out of eyesight. After over an hour of this nightmare, I caught a glimmer of a brown trailhead sign, and beyond that, the reflection of my Jeep's headlights. So I started to run. I threw my supplies in the back tailgate and hightailed it out of there. But this is where things get even weirder. As I was pulling away, in my rearview mirror, I caught a small glimpse of what was causing the noises. At the time, I didn't know what I was even seeing. Something tall, very tall, with a darkness around it that seemed to repel the ambient red glow from my taillights. Around it, a long, tattered robe, seemingly crimson in color. This could have been due to my taillight's red glow, I'm not sure, but either way, the image was visually striking and physically jarring. As the dust trail left by my Jeep grew in size, the figure slowly faded back into the surrounding forest. Now, if this all sounds crazy, well, you're damn right it is. I have been to some incredible places and some very frightening places, but I have never seen or felt anything like this before. But it doesn't end there, unfortunately. 2 days later, the next wing of my trip took me to Mount Rainier National Park. Now, I was still a little nervous, but I was now 200 miles away. Whatever it was surely gone now. If you've never been, the sheer vastness and beauty of this area is breathtaking. So after a day of taking in the sights, and the uneasiness began to fade away. Even the first night went by without an issue. A little hesitant at first, I quickly felt relaxed enough to drift to sleep, staring up at the stars through the observation window in my tent. Waking the next morning, I found nothing out of place and nothing suspicious, confirming that whatever it was truly far away. Another 2 days of hiking went by without any issues or disturbances, aside from a few cougar sightings and a pack of wolves in the distance on my second night. It wasn't until my last night that I experienced it again. Sleeping on my last night, less than 3 miles from my Jeep, I began to hear the same noises that woke me up in the middle of the night. Except this time, it was very, very close. I shot up, grabbed my light, and shined it outside of the tent. Immediately, the light caught a glimpse of what I could now confirm was an old, tattered, crimson-red robe gliding behind a giant evergreen. I was frozen in fear. My still waking mind could not even comprehend what I was seeing or what was happening. The demonic purring noises seemingly teased me from behind the tree. Now fully lucid, I began to contemplate my options. Option 1 was to make a run for it, leaving all my gear behind. The least likely, not only would I be leaving literally tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment, but I would have no chance of sprinting the 3 miles needed to reach my Jeep. Besides that, whatever this was, it had to be fast to reach me so quickly, and also incredible at tracking. So option 1 was a no-go. Option 2, spray the shit out of this thing with bear spray and then run for it. Only a slightly better option than 1, but still not viable. Finally, option 3, the least fun, probably the most logical option. Remain in the tent until morning and defend myself if I have to. And so I did. I'm not sure what time I woke up, but I was too nervous to even look at my phone. but I do know that it was hours before sunlight. About 30 minutes after the first rays reached my tent, the noises finally went away. It was another 45 before I felt safe enough to pack up and begin the hike back. I reached my Jeep and again broke every law in the park on my way out, leaving tire marks in the freshly paved road. I rented a hotel and regrouped, talking to a few friends of mine who were frequent hikers in the area. None of them had ever experienced anything like this, and the only one who actually believed me was one friend of mine. So I decided to skip my next 2 stops, Olympic National Parks and the Hoh Rainforest. Employer be damned, it doesn't take a genius to realize that would be a bad idea. I don't know what I saw, but what I did see was something, a tall, dark figure in a long tattered crimson robe. So what do you think of that? The person's being pursued by something in the woods? Now,
It sounds like The Village.
I was going to say, it reminded me of the story, or the movie The Village.
Yes.
That's exactly, by M. Night Shyamalan. That's exactly what it sounds like.
What? Unless it's just somebody messing around.
Well, and my other thought is...
What could that be? First of all, that's a bad thing to do, to mess around like that.
Well, I begin to wonder if the person isn't hallucinating this. Like, I don't know, maybe there's something wrong medically with their brain and they're hallucinating this. Like maybe it's not real, because it's impossible for someone to be in one part of the globe, have these terrifying experiences happen to them, then be 200 miles away and the thing shows up there too, and it's just beating on trees and purring like a cat. I mean,
if it's a physical being, you mean?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Maybe it's a figment of their imagination. Or, I mean, maybe it's a jinn or something like that. They talk about
some kind of demonic entity that's kind of hanging around with them.
Right. The photographer goes all over the world in these, exotic destinations. I always think of, is it The Exorcist, where they find that little figurine? Maybe you did something or moved something, or
like you and I always talk about. You go to some of these evil spots and something attaches itself to you.
Man,
and then you don't know what's in there with you. Next thing you know, you brought it home.
I think that's a real possibility. But
no, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, let's take a break, folks. And when we get back from the break, I'm going to be talking about scary things that are in your closet. Stick with us, folks. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. I'm going to be talking about the boogeyman. What is he? Who is he? And why do so many cultures have their own version of this iconic monster? Every kid, no matter where on the globe one grows up, has heard his or her own version of a monster living in their closet, or perhaps under their bed, peering out at them. Is this just a scary tale that parents have collectively been making up and telling small children in order to get them to behave or to go to bed? Or is there something more to it? Something more than an overactive imagination? Perhaps, just like children with memories of a former life that slowly fades over time as they grow older, perhaps some children can see things that adults simply cannot. And this is why so many kids see monsters in their room, outside their windows, under their beds, and yes, in their closets. So, today I'm going to be talking about strange things people have seen in their closets. Let's begin. Stories of strange things lurking in someone's closet at night come from all around the world and take many forms. One account from 1952 seems to involve some sort of imp or gnome, which would come out of the closet at night to terrorize a young boy named Dan Bortko in Kansas City. The story says that the family had moved to a 2-story home on a rural farm property in Liberty, Missouri, complete with a barn, and from a very young age, Bortko claims he frequently saw a small humanoid, about 3 feet tall and fully decked out in German lederhosen. He would often see this creature smoking a pipe, lurking about their house, often appearing in his room at night, and frequently stepping out of the closet. The creature would often stand there, just looking at him, before smiling or winking and disappearing through the closet door. Bortko also said that he would often look outside his window at night and he would see little people congregating in and around the barn. He once drew a picture of one he had seen up close, and it was so frightening to his little brother that he would cry whenever he saw it. Bortko would say of his first encounter with the creature, "I had just awakened from a nap and was rubbing my eyes and saw what you would call a troll. I call him a troll because that's what he reminded me of. It was an old man with a long beard, large nose, about 3 feet tall, just standing at the foot of my bed. And I was astounded." So, what was Dan seeing? Was this a gnome or a troll living in his closet? Or was his closet some sort of portal to another dimension, like in the children's cartoon Monsters, Inc.? I don't know. Here's another story. Check this out. It says, "I'm a rather intuitive and complete believer that there are spirits and things out there in the world that cannot easily be explained. Now, my boyfriend is a much more logical person and grounded in facts and of science. In other words, he's kind of a skeptic. Well, the other night, we were sitting on our couch when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence and looked past me. He's played jokes on me before, when he'll do a double take or pretend that he sees someone or something, and I thought this was no different. But I turned my head and looked where he was looking. Nothing was there, just the landing and the entryway to our apartment. I thought, oh, what a good one. You got me again. But then I looked back at him. He was still focused on the landing. Very serious. He was not joking. Well, he got up and slowly walked over to the landing. He looked out into the hallway, which has 2 closets on the left-hand side, perpendicular to the front door. He then went into the kitchen and looked around before coming out and asking, "Did you see that?" At this point, I knew he wasn't joking, and I said, "No." What? What did you see?" He told me that he had seen a distinct shadow of a person, like someone had came into the apartment and was on the landing. He showed me where he saw the shadow and tried standing in a different place to see if he could cast a similar shadow for me to see. When he stood in front of the closet closest to the entry, I could not see him, but I could see his shadow where he had been. He rejoined me on the couch and said that he really thought someone had come in our apartment. But our door was deadbolted, so no one could have entered. Instinctually, I called out and said, "Hey, is there anyone out there? Hello? Anyone here?" And if you are, you're not meant to be. Go towards the light. I was kind of half joking. Maybe the strangest thing was that my skeptic boyfriend, he didn't even tease me for saying that. It's almost like he thought it was a good thing for me to say. Well, later that night, he brought it up again and said that maybe the reason our cats sit in the entryway is to protect us from whatever that was. I'm kind of bummed that I missed it, and I've never seen anything like it in this apartment again, but it does make me wonder. Interestingly, that closet, the one he was standing from, has always had a really distinct, strong smell. Like that old building, mothball, almost nauseating sweat smell mixed with cigarettes. And to be clear, it's not like the smell of an animal that has died and gotten trapped or something. I know that smell, and it's not that. So it's not a dead mouse or anything. This is something different. We've been in this place for 9 months, and we always said that it was left over from an old lady or something that perhaps was a previous tenant. Or perhaps the person below us, or even the apartment next to us. The whole apartment kind of smells stale from time to time. The building was built in the 1930s. But it's most intense in that closet. Even though the rest of the apartment is fine most of the time, it is consistently in that closet that I smell the odor. I cannot get rid of the smell. I've tried airing it out with fans, air fresheners, charcoal, vinegar. Nothing works. Wow. It smells like you've got a spirit or something living in the closet. I've often heard that described by people, even when we had Joshua Cutchin on the show and he wrote a book about odors, otherworldly odors. Sense of smell is a very strong sense. And oftentimes when people have encounters with not just ghosts, but cryptids or even extraterrestrials, there's a scent that's associated with it. Like, I know for UFOs and stuff, a lot of times people smell ozone burning. Or I know that like Travis Walton, when he was abducted by aliens up there in Arizona, that he talked about the strange smell of like sweat and body odor that was in the alien craft. So I've also heard lots of stories where people smell their grandma's, favorite perfume, and they think that there are grandmas, haunting their house. It could be something similar to that. I don't know. But let's move on. Let's check out this next one. This person writes, in the summer of 2002, I moved into a little apartment in a small town in Massachusetts. With the exception of the previous few months, I had been out of my parents' house for years, but I'd always had roommates. This was my first apartment by myself, and I was really looking forward to being alone. It was a cozy first-floor apartment with a private garden entrance at the rear of an old house that had been converted into 4 apartments, and I loved it. The first night that I moved in was wonderful. My friends had all gone home after beer and pizza, and I was left alone. I had electricity and hot water. I didn't have cable or TV or a phone for dial-up internet or anything yet, so I took a long hot shower and read a book until I felt sleepy, and then proceeded to enjoy one of the best night's sleep I've ever had. Independence and quiet are wonderful things. The next night, things started to change. As I said, this was an old house, and as such, the closet door in my bedroom didn't close properly unless I lifted the doorknob and hip-checked it closed. Opening it was no picnic either. That night, again, I fell asleep with a sense of peace and tranquility. That didn't last. Sometime in the middle of the night, the closet door slammed open, as if someone had kicked it open from the inside. It smacked into the wall, and then it slammed shut again. I know this because it happened many more times over the next few weeks. Well, as you could imagine, I was catapulted out of sleep into a panic. I sat upright, staring at the closet door, just terrified, and too petrified to reach for the light that was in the dark. I probably sat like that for a good 15 minutes, just staring at the closet door before I could move. Once I got the light turned on, I left it on for the remainder of the night. The closet door continued to do this thing as the weeks went on, accompanied by lights turning on in the middle of the night, doors locking on their own, the stereo doing whatever the hell it wanted, and cabinet doors all being opened when I got home from work. Lots of other strange things. Well, I was not happy, but I didn't know what to do. One Friday night, a friend came over for dinner, and I told him about my situation, admitting that I was scared and might need to move out already. He told me not to worry about it and that he would have a little chat with my ghosts. I was a little uncomfortable with it, but he insisted. So I poured myself a glass of wine and went outside to peer in through my bedroom window while my friend sat on the floor in front of my open closet in what appeared to be a one-sided conversation. After about 15 minutes or so, he closed the closet door and signaled for me that he was finished. He wouldn't tell me what he said, but he assured me that my troubles would be over. And they were. For 5 wonderful, peaceful years. In the summer of 2007, I was working on my computer in my bedroom, listening to some music and enjoying the warm breeze through the window when I heard a loud crash from the other end of the apartment. I ran into the kitchen to find a beautiful old ceramic serving platter that I had left on the counter, smashed in the middle of the kitchen floor, about 5 feet from the counter. That was the end of the peace and quiet. For the next 10 months, I endured an ever-increasing amount of activity, which even my friend couldn't do anything about it. My boyfriend would no longer stay in my apartment alone for more than 5 minutes, and other friends often said they felt uncomfortable there, even with others around. In the spring of 2008, I moved to another small town in Massachusetts and haven't experienced anything at all to indicate that my current home is haunted. Thanks for what you do, Danielle. Wow. This is so like many stories that are emailed to us where people, for whatever reason, experience a little bit of poltergeist activity, opening and shutting of doors, cabinets, glasses being broken, just whatever it is, tormenting. What's interesting, though, is that her friend actually got the ghost to quit for 5 years, and then all of a sudden it was back. So I wonder what was going on there. Like the ghost, maybe they did something to anger the ghost. I don't know. Pretty interesting story. Now, on Lon Strickler's website, Phantoms and Monsters, there's another strange account of something in someone's closet that comes from 2009, where apparently inside this one person's closet is some sort of beast. I don't know. The witness claims that they woke up one night suddenly around 3 a.m. and found that they were covered in sweat and overcome with an inexplicable cold fear that was overwhelming as its intensity grew. The person says that although their brother was sleeping in the same room with them, he was perfectly asleep. There was also seemed to be what they described as a heavy sense of someone there, someone in the room, leering, and they began to hear strange sounds from their large walk-in closet. The witness would say, "I looked around in my room, hoping to see my mom watching over us from the doorway of the closet. I don't know why I thought it would be her, but I did. Since our nightlight was on, I could see things pretty clearly. I looked to my left to see a tall figure standing in our closet. It had an oval-like head with small eyes and appendages hanging from its face, almost like a scruffy beard. But it made a more sense that it would be some type of structure. I don't know what it was. It looked over at the both of us, up and down. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me, since I could be very imaginative. But what snapped me out of this is when it pushed some of the clothes hangers out of the way and the fact that the window was open. Its skin looked rough and pasty, almost like it was in a sauna for 2 years. It caught a whiff of me being awake, and almost immediately I lost consciousness and control over my body. All accounts that were had from that night had not been fully remembered the following morning, besides the fact that my sheets were in my closet instead of on my bed when I awoke. So isn't that a strange description? It almost sounds like a Hat Man sighting, the shadow being a shadow person that is often seen where it looks like they're wearing a fedora for whatever reason. Kind of reminds me of that, but the appendages on the face, I don't know what that is. That sounds like a mind flayer from D&D or something like that. I think of, what is the Pirates of the Caribbean movies where the guy's kind of got like an octopus type head. It kind of reminds me of that. I don't know. Check this one out. It says this report comes from the state of Virginia, from a witness who believes an actual demon inhabited their closet in their master bedroom. The witness claims that odd activity near the closet, including loud bangs and murmuring voices, were often heard at night. And sometimes it was so intense that he actually put a crucifix up by the closet to try to keep whatever it was, contained or at bay. There was even an incident where he says the entity pushed over his young daughter, and it would later lash out at his wife. The witness says of his experiences with the terrifying demonic force in the closet, he says it did not take long to figure out that the presence was in a large closet area, which adjoined the bathroom and faced directly towards the bed in the master bedroom. The closet area never got any natural sunlight and was extremely dark at night. I could feel that something from the depths of the darkness was watching. The crucifix seemed to keep it out of the room, but it still stared at us from the closet. So I did the usual. "Get out! This is my house! I command you to leave!" I felt that this thing was not going anywhere, that it was not scared of me at all. It was not moving. Not long after that, we found a picture of our children on the floor, and it had been smashed in the middle of the frame like something was thrown at it. Also, one night while watching TV, my wife left for work, and I saw a rather large shadow fly out of the bedroom and out towards the car as she was leaving, almost as if it was chasing her. Not long after that, she suffered a stroke and a major car accident, both of which left no lasting injuries. Wow, now that is a scary and terrifying story. I mean, this whatever shadow beast followed his wife and caused her to have a stroke and a car accident. But, he also claims that didn't have any lasting injuries, so apparently she was able to survive the stroke. But that's terrifying, right? Check out this story. A woman named Karen from California wrote this. She says, "When I was 6 or 7, I saw something that scared me so badly that to this day, I still sleep with a light on. I shared a room with my 2 sisters in a little house in La Puente, California. In our room, we had sliding closet doors. You know the ones that come off the tracks every other day. Most of the time, they were not closed all the way. Anyways, one night I woke up. I don't know what time it was, but it must have been late because everyone else was asleep in the house. Everyone was all in bed, all nestled in for the night. My bed was situated to where it was facing the closet doors. As I glanced over at them, an orange glowing man peeked around the corner of the closet door, and looked right at me. He was smiling. Not a comforting smile either. It seemed more diabolical. His fingers wrapped around the frame of the door first, and then he poked his head out. Now, from what I can remember, he kind of looked like the Joker from the original Batman series, and glowed from what appeared to be within. I was so scared. I couldn't make a sound. In fact, I don't think I even tried. I just turned over, and I hid my face in the pillow for what seemed like an eternity. When I mustered the courage to look up, I realized it was morning. Well, I told my parents about what had happened, and they told me it was probably just a bad dream. But I know it wasn't a dream. I remember my heart racing, and how hard it was to breathe while hiding my face in the pillow. In the same house, I one time witnessed a pair of shoes take a step with no one in them. And I also watched my Barbie doll fall over one time and then sit itself back up. Anyways, I hope you like the story. Karen. Wow. That's pretty creepy. Something looking like the Joker from Batman, glowing, and, much like the Grinning Man, the stories of the Grinning Man that David Weatherly's written about. It's like a sinister laugh. Not a laugh, sinister smile. Just an evil-looking smile on its face. And, I don't know why is that creepy? I don't know. Why are clowns creepy? It just kind of is. But again, in the closet, what's the deal with the closet? Why are so many stories go back to something being a monster in the closet? Everybody knows there's dozens of movies made about it, and everyone's heard that. Little kids all the time claim that there's a monster in their closet. And fathers, especially fathers, sometimes mothers, you have to go in, and you have to turn the light on, you have to open the door to show them, look, there's nothing in there, see? It's just a mess. It's just your toys. You got your Godzilla in there or whatever. That's it. And this happens. But what I'm wondering is, somehow are children more sensitive, and perhaps they are seeing things that adults can't seem to see. And as you grow older, you kind of lose that ability, that somehow only children are affected. I know, like when it comes to poltergeist activity, for whatever reason, it seems to really plague like teenage girls more than any other group. For whatever reason, teenage girls seem to be affected by poltergeist more than any other groups. You can look into it. I don't know. Maybe these kids don't have an overactive imagination. Maybe they really are seeing something. And for whatever reason, these tricksters from another dimension or whatever, they like to torment children. I don't know. Or maybe they're always there, but only children can see them. And not every child, but only certain children. I don't know, but I hope you like those stories. If you have any more stories of scary things like that, please feel free to email the show. Let's take a break. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. And we're back with Expanded Perspectives. So, more scary stories. The boogeyman, the Baba Yaga, whatever you want to call it. This is a common thing where kids claim to see a monster under their bed or in their closet.
Why is it a closet?
I don't know.
Because like even in movies, the closet is like the doorway.
Yeah.
But you're like, why? Why is it the closet? I mean, all it is a tiny little room just right off. I mean, like, what? I don't know. I don't understand the links between the closet and the scary stuff.
But even in the cartoons, like, what was it, Monsters, Inc., where, like, the closet was like the portal, right,
Yep,
into
exactly.
another realm. I mean, I don't know. Something about the door.
It's almost like we've created it.
Yeah.
Like I mean, the boogeyman has always been, talked about.
In almost
way
every
before,
culture.
Well, way before there was houses with closets.
No, you're right, yeah.
So I don't understand why the closet's just all of a sudden the boogeyman's like, oh, look like they built a room just for me.
Right, I liked in, Cat's Eye, where the thing has a little tiny door down there at the bottom
Yes.
there, like a little hole in the sheetrock.
Where it runs in like a rat.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, dude. I can relate because I think everyone listening, I think we've all had an experience as a child thinking you saw something in the closet, thinking there's something in your closet, or like, you'd have your clothes laid over like a chair or something in your room, and at night the light would hit it just right and you panic because you swear there's something sitting there, and all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I think we've all dealt with something in the closet.
Yeah, I don't know.
Some sort of something creepy. Folks, before we get out of here, I got something else I want to share with you. A while back, I did a whole show about the Lyme disease problems that we have and the fact that it may have come from Plum Island, right? I mean,
Right.
Remember we talked about all that. I don't know if anybody was keeping up with this, but written back on July 16th, Miss Emily Tillett wrote for CBS News, and the headline reads, House passes amendment ordering Pentagon to review whether U.S. experimented with weaponizing ticks.
Really?
So now they're digging into it. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here that you have to unpack. A lot of stuff that some may be. It's tough. My biggest, I'll give you a quote out of here. Republican Chris Smith, which is, he says, is to order the Pentagon Inspector General to conduct a review about whether the military experimented with making ticks into biological weapons. The amendment passed by the House last week by a voice vote. And it said that would require the Pentagon Inspector General to examine whether the Department of Defense experimented with ticks and other insects regarding its use as a biological weapon between the years of 1950 and 1975. Now, like I told you, Representative Smith says that my amendment tasks the DOD Inspector General to ask the hard questions and report back. And that during the debate of his amendment, Smith said the investigation would explore the following questions. What were the parameters of the program? Who ordered it? Was there ever any accidental release anywhere or at any time of any disease ticks? Were any ticks released by design? Did the program contribute to the disease burden? And could any of this information help current-day researchers find a way to mitigate these diseases? Now it goes on. It's a very well-written thing. You need to, if you want to look into it, it's great. Now there was another article pumped out, and this article came from the American Council on Science and Health, and it came out July 30th. And I'm going to read y'all the headlines,
Right.
but I feel attacked because the headline reads, No, conspiracy theorists, Lyme disease is not an escaped military bioweapon. Now, I don't know about y'all, but if I was trying to cover my ass from going to prison, from making sure that some of my bugs escaped,
Right.
the first thing I would do was go to some website, pay it off, American Council of Science and Health. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying this is what I would do, and I would pay it off, and I would have them release a whole write-up on disinformation and how to make it seem like you're an idiot if you believe there's a conspiracy involved in this. What I've always said and what you and I have all discussed on here and all the emails I received and the support I received from doing this, from those of you that suffer from Lyme disease, there's over 300,000 Americans diagnosed annually with Lyme disease.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how did it just start out of nowhere?
Well, and they go back, and this little article goes back to when it talks about infected ticks that were collected in 1945. They go back to a lot of stuff. This is from South Fork of Long Island. They cover a lot of this information. But what they never really truly do is explain why the epicenter started in that area. Now they talk about allegedly the very first case come from Wisconsin. And then there was some people in the 70s got it in California. And apparently the person in Wisconsin had never traveled out of Wisconsin. Okay. But animals are shipped from one group to another. There's goods that are shipped from one state to another. You're telling me ticks couldn't hitch a ride, wasn't on a guy's pant leg when he got in and drove his truck, then it got out,
Right.
Who knows? But also, too, like you could never leave your home ever and still get a cold. If somebody comes to visit you, they brought the cold with them. What they're trying to do is it almost feels like they're talking down to us because we're willing to look a little bit deeper than what they want. Now, I know it sounds crazy. I understand that. But something about this whole Lyme disease thing always feels dirty.
I agree.
And I don't say that, like I've said before, I don't know that they did it intentionally. Maybe they did. But accidentally, when you're monkeying around with something that's that small and that dangerous, just like any biological weapon, all it takes is one tiny mistake. One day, all of you that are listening right now, if you're at work or ever been at work, you haven't had a day where you wasn't paying attention. You're telling me you give it 110% every day and you're as sharp as you are on one day on that whole week. Like, Are you kidding?
No, let's not pretend.
Let's all not joke ourselves. Exactly. Everybody makes a mistake. And if you're working in a lab, you telling me they don't make them either? I mean, everybody's human. Humans make mistakes no matter how careful you are. No matter how many checks and double checks and anything you can put in place, there's always going to be a mistake made.
And we know that they were doing top secret experiments in that area of Long Island, and miraculously this disease pops up there.
Yeah.
And I mean, that, like you said, that's the epicenter.
Yeah. All around Plum Island. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm not saying these people are right or these people are wrong. I just think it's funny how all of this stuff's been out there. It made a big flare up. Now it's affecting all of these people. And it's been dead silent now. And then out of the blue, a few weeks ago on CBS News, they start talking about this, of how they're now looking into, did the U.S. weaponize ticks? I mean, we already know that the government has tested stuff on citizens multiple times.
Yeah.
Maybe this wasn't meant to be a test, but like maybe the genie got out of the bottle. That's what I'm saying.
I think so.
So it feels dirty. And look, I would say if you're interested, folks, look into it, look it up, read on it yourself, see what you think. Read, like I said, read the article from CBS News. Read the article from the ACSH.org, the American Council of Science and Health. They have some really valid, hard points that make you go, maybe this is just by luck or just by Mother Nature. Because I know crazy things happen in Mother Nature. We don't create every disease. I get that. Crazy stuff happens. But every now and then, the crazy stuff happens and the man-made stuff happens, overlap in these areas. And this just feels like one of those overlaps.
I agree wholeheartedly. Well, if you have any crazy stories that you'd like to share with me and Cam, please feel free to email the show, expandedperspectives@yahoo.com. You can call the show, 817-945-3828, and you can follow us on all forms of social media. Till next time, folks, be careful out there. I'm Kyle Filson. He's Cam Hale.
Peace, y'all.